Hey, it's Daniel and Gav, and we've played 4 hours of Resident Evil 7. We've got 8 minutes of gameplay for you, so we're going to talk about some of the things we really liked. So this is where our demo started. We're roughly about half an hour into the game, something like that.
Yeah, you've been abducted by the Baker family,
Yeah.
and you've been separated from your partner, Mia.
Yeah, and you're not quite sure like what's going on. Like, we weren't told really what's happened to bring you here or anything like that. You basically see that little dinner scene that is in the trailers, and then that's it. You've basically got to escape, and I wasn't sure when I first started playing this if I was actually going to be able to play it.
It's a very hands-off game. There's no tutorial,
horrible.
there's no guidance, there's nothing in your inventory.
Yeah.
And you're scuttling around the main house, and you can hear Jack, that's Jack Baker,
Yeah.
just kind of in the distance, and he begins to follow you. So he's kind of this obstacle while you're exploring the house. And you don't really know how to tackle him whatsoever.
Because you've got nothing on you. Like, you're so vulnerable, and that is terrifying. Like, I'm quite a jumpy person anyway, and just having basically what, at the time, is an unstoppable machine coming after you right at the beginning of a game.
Yeah.
It doesn't, and as you said, like, it doesn't give you any clues of what you're meant to be doing.
See, I love his design because he's kind of this like abusive father. He's a bit Jack Torrance. He's a bit Michael Myers as well. Like, you just can't do anything. You can't reason with him. He's just going to keep coming for you.
He's absolute chaos, and there's a bit coming up which sort of just proves this. Like, that you've seen the bit where he chops off the other guy's arm. They just don't care about anything, and this is a perfect example of this. He doesn't care about walls. He walks through walls. Like, who's sorting that out afterwards?
Probably Marguerite again.
So this is all going on, and when it all calms down, you get to like a really, really awesome bit of a Resident Evil game, which is like the safe house. Yeah. And you're talking to this girl on the phone. You're not quite sure who she is or what her agenda is, but she's kind of guiding you, but there's no way you trust her either.
You did good, Ethan.
Yeah, it's a little bit like Firewatch in that regard. You you want to cling to this voice who's trying to help you through and feels friendly,
absolutely,
but also suspicious of them as well.
So the bit we're seeing now is basically one of the first big boss battles, which takes place in the garage.
Yeah, because I think the pacing's really good, because unlike other recent Resident Evil games, you're not kind of mowing down hordes of zombies.
No.
You've got this one enemy who kind of dominates the first location of the main house, which is Jack Baker, and for a lot of the time he's kind of like an obstacle to avoid.
Yeah.
And then here it kind of escalates into this bigger set piece.
Yeah. And you're not even sure if you're doing the right thing ever. I think that's the best thing about it, because you've got this gun, but it didn't seem like a lot of the time when we were doing the boss fights, like we were doing the right thing, and it was just like a couple of times we sort of looked at each other like, what is this what you're meant to be doing?
I think that's the fine line, because it induces panic, because it is hands off.
Yeah.
You are frantically looking around the environment for a thing to save you, a thing to buy you time, and it doesn't really point that out. Sometimes that can be slightly frustrating, but I think it kind of works well. Now, I think this really demonstrates what Resident Evil 7 has in common with previous games in the series.
Yeah.
So soon the Baker house starts to open up, and you encounter puzzles and locked doors, and as you unlock those doors you start to learn more about your predicament.
Yeah, you can see there, so there's a door in the background with a dog with 3 heads missing, so you know at some point you're going to be bringing back the 3 pieces to open that, which opens up the next bit. It feels kind of like when you step into the mansion for the first time and you're looking at all these different doors that you can't go through at the moment, thinking, how am I going to get through this stuff? But that's the point of it.
And the puzzles
really
are ridiculously elaborate, and intentionally so.
Absolutely.
There's a great line where Ethan, the character you play, says, "Who builds this shit?"
Yeah.
And it's like they've just gone with it. They go, "This is something that is quintessentially Resident Evil.
Yeah.
Let's just embrace it."
So this, for me, is one of the creepiest bits of the entire game. So throughout the demo that we played, this old lady just kept appearing in different parts, and you don't see who moves her at all. You just come out of a thing and you can hear her singing in the background, and then when you approach her she stops singing, and then when you turn the corner she starts singing again.
And you can't shoot her.
You can't shoot her, you're not allowed. It is basically Grandpa from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He's almost like slumped in the exact same way as him as well.
Don't pass her a hammer. But again, like, very strongly themed rooms like the Spencer Mansion, which you have to explore, usually with Jack breathing down your neck. Like, as this is happening, you can hear Jack kind of prowl in the corridor, so you need to be like quick and alert and ready to hide any single moment.
Absolutely. And for me, like, this is really similar to Resident Evil 4 in the fact that, like, it just feels like they're normal people that something has happened to. So you remember, like, in Resident Evil 4 where, you'd happen upon the village, if the people haven't seen you yet, they're just like, taking wheelbarrows around and just going about their normal day. There's a half-done billiards game in the background. Like, these people were just normal people. What has happened to them to turn them like they are?
We start finding notes which kind of you start to piece together a timeline to what happened to the Baker family. So yeah, what we're about to see here is one of the doors that you unlock later on. This is the Scorpion door. So obviously, it looks pretty intimidating, but you know something quite useful is probably in there.
Yeah.
So you have to find a Scorpion key, but there's also a mangled snake door and a crow door.
Yeah. This as well is another part of the Baker house you go into. And it's kind of like the processing area, I think it is. So it's kind of where they've been doing some naughty stuff. For me, this is probably one of the most disappointing bits of the demo because you come up against enemies that are quite sort of classic Resi enemies, the molded.
They're kind of a bit like the Regenerators from 4 or the Ooze from Revelations. You know, this is Resident Evil iconography.
Yeah.
But it feels more like a gauntlet for you to use up all your ammo.
Yeah.
To make you helpless once again, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe. I kind of feel like I was less afraid of the world that had been created because I knew that these things were in it. Because if these things are in it, there's some kind of supernatural element to it. It just felt scarier when it was just Jack and Marguerite sort of like trundling around the house and like coming after you. When you see these monsters, like, I'm not afraid of these. So here we're coming up to like one of the second big fights with Jack, and it takes place in such a small little area that it's so claustrophobic, and it's just not very nice at all. And you're not sure that what you're doing is the right thing.
Well, it's in stark contrast to that molded bit where it's very clear that you need to kill them and go for headshots.
Exactly.
With this, it's so intense and so panic-inducing because you don't know what's going to help you in the situation because he is unstoppable.
You're just panicked constantly, and because of that, you make these like silly mistakes. Like people always saying, like, you know, when you're watching horror films, like, why do they go upstairs? Why are they doing this? The reason you do it is because you're panicked and you have no idea what you're meant to be doing. And this game does that really, really well.
Absolutely.
So this is a completely new area. This is the old house that you're going around.
Yeah, so this is a bit like the residence in the original Resident Evil. It lies behind the Baker Mansion.
Yeah.
It's like balanced over the Louisiana swamp. Yeah. And what I like about it is this is the area of the game presided over by Marguerite, Jack's wife. And what that does is it kind of changes the tempo and the tone of the game.
Yeah.
Whereas he was more kind of something out of The Shining or Halloween. She's something out of Evil Dead or The Exorcist. She's like demented and possessed.
And Marguerite's the bit that happens in the VR mission as well, that I played, and there's a video of me like screaming and trying to hide from her because it's just so scary. I just don't like her laugh. She shoots bees at you. No one wants that.
Another very Resident Evil enemy.
Absolutely, yeah. And like, you know, the little hive thing, like that's proper Resident Evil.
So what we're about to do here is actually do a very simple puzzle, but again, it's got kind of an allusion to the original Resident Evil series. You know, it's a crank. It's a classic item in Resident Evil 1, and that's where I think it strikes a really good balance. It mixes old and new.
Yeah.
It kind of absorbs a lot of other stuff from modern horror and classic horror without being derivative, but it also feels quintessentially Resident Evil. And it's a really hard balance to preserve, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I think it's both confident in what makes it Resident Evil, but there's also humility about it.
Yeah.
Where it's gone, oh, you know, a lot of modern horror games have moved on.
Yeah.
They've gone first person. They've made their character vulnerable. Maybe we should be doing that as well. It hasn't been too proud to change.
Oh, man. So coming up here is a bit that in the demo, we were in a really dark room over in Japan, and it's probably like the scariest bit of the entire thing. So, yeah, she comes up and scares you, and I don't think I've ever screamed like that whilst playing a video game.
Well, I believe your words were, off, lady.
Yeah, it was horrible. Everyone was laughing at me.
So, Gav, in short, is Resident Evil 7 scary?
It's so scary, man. Like, I'm not going to be able to play it by myself. And I'm definitely not going to be able to play it by myself in VR.
Welcome to the family, son.